Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Focus, episode 193, the review for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the North, South, East and West, and welcome to another episode of Film Focus. I'm your host, the Hypersonic 55, and I'm glad that you decided to join me once again for some film-related discussion. And it's review time once again, and as you heard from the start of the episode, we are talking about the latest and last entry in the Mission Impossible series in the form of The Final Reckoning, previously known as Dead Reckoning Part 2. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of this franchise. While I've been aware of the series prior to 2011, it wasn't until I saw Ghost Protocol where I got on board and became a big fan of this franchise. Ghost Protocol was such a fantastic, thrilling, and crazy film. And again, with it being the live action film debut for Brad Bird, he did such a great job with that film. It was insane. And then from there, the series just got crazier with the amount of stunts, the more intricate storylines, and how they really started to form this team around Ethan, where the stakes were there not only for the world, but also the characters that surrounded him. And by the time we got to Dead Reckoning, my hype levels were stupidly high. I don't think I'd been more excited for a film since, I'd say, maybe Avengers Infinity War. And I remember watching the film and I was like, this film was good, and there was definitely stuff I liked about it, but it was not nearly as hype as I wanted it to be. And with the discovery that the main adversary was AI instead of it being, more of a villain that had a face you could put to Ethan's story. I mean, technically you did have a villain in the form of Gabriel being that individual from his past that he thought was, essentially gone. But again, AI was the main enemy, and while it was topical and, timely for the world that we're living in at the moment, I just wasn't keen on that being the direction for the series. And with it ending in the way in which it did, you knew that there was going to be more. So I was very, very curious to see how the Final Reckoning would end up. I would say that my hype levels were still there, but noticeably lower. I wanted to keep my hype levels in check prior to going into the film. But I saw it on opening day, and now I have thoughts. I let my thoughts marinate for one extra day before I decided to go about and do this review. So as per usual, I will be talking about story, characters, presentation, and the overall conclusion. So without further ado, let's jump in. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the story, and it can be summed up as the following. Ethan Hunt and his IMF team continue their search for the AI known as the Entity that was revealed in Dead Reckoning. Since that previous film, the AI has spread and caused even more problems for the world in terms of getting access to things that it couldn't before, and has the world's government all concerned and very troubled for what happens next. The fate of the world hangs in the balance, so it is down to Ethan using what resources he can to basically stop this AI before it causes all sorts of chaos, and that is a way for me to summarize the film without going into the area of spoilers. Now, I thought the story for this film was pretty good, though there was definitely some issues I had here and there. I would say that The Final Reckoning definitely works better as a companion piece to Dead Reckoning, because obviously were initially conceived as two halves of the same film, split into two. And there's definitely aspects where this film only really works if you have the continuity of what came before. It's not so well of a film if you're just like watching it in isolation. But also on top of that, talking about continuity, there's not only continuity between this and the last film, obviously, but there is continuity going back to some of the previous Mission Impossible films. Now, I won't say where and how and which films they are, but there was a surprising amount of references and callbacks, and I was like, oh wow, okay. I did not expect them to go about and do that. And this can be a double-edged sword in some occasions, depending on how it's done, because with a franchise that pushes forward and does a whole load of new things, it can be interesting when there are certain callbacks or retcons. And in the case of this film, I thought there was a lot of interesting things, and definitely made me look back at some of those previous films and go, oh, that's very interesting. But at the same time, I'm just thinking, was that entirely necessary? I mean, I get it, and it makes sense within the context of this film, but at the same time, it felt like a bit of a reach, so I'm not too sure. I'm in a bit of two minds about how some of that connective tissue worked. It again felt like it was a nice way to bring the franchise together and bring together a lot of these distant pieces that felt like, obviously they were still part of the same franchise, but definitely more separately. So I was like, oh, okay, interesting. But I did enjoy the humor in this film. The humor in the Mission Impossible franchise has always been pretty solid, especially once you got from Ghost Protocol onwards. But I felt like this film had a lot more humor than I expected in these moments where things were a lot more serious. So there were definitely moments of levity that was required, but there was some unintentional funny moments. But again, I think that they were done well considering the scenarios that they were done in, and the stakes and tension. Good gravy. The situations that they put Ethan and his team in are insane, and you're just trying to figure out how the hell is anybody supposed to get out of these scenarios? How the hell are they going to win? And just when you think you have time to breathe, just when you think, okay, this is over, or this is the worst that this scenario can get into, worst case scenario happens, and then the worst case scenario on top of that. It's like layers and layers of pain and suffering. You're just like, God, just allow me to breathe. I can only imagine how much worse this would have been if I watched this in IMAX. It's like, friggin' out. But yeah, I had a good time watching this, and I would say with the first half, I definitely was more concerned because there was some interesting choices when it came to the pacing, editing, and the overall story. But I think once we got into the second half of the movie, the pacing became a little better. I was more enjoying what I was watching, and the acceleration of the plot definitely just shot up. And by the time it was over, I felt like there was a satisfactory conclusion to this. It felt like everything had come full circle, and I was grinning in a really nice way. So while I can definitely see for some people that this would not be a very strong film in this series, considering the highs that we've had beforehand, and for me personally, I would say nothing has gotten any better than Ghost Protocol or Fallout for me. Those are still the pinnacles of this franchise. But this film definitely has a lot of really good things in there that for long-time fans, they will get a lot out of this. But I would say for more casual people or people who, watch these films but aren't as fully invested, there's a lot of it that, is deep cut references and stuff like that. I'm just not sure everybody would be down with, and I even questioned a few of those things here and there, but again, as an overall thing, still pretty good. Okay, now it's time to talk about the cast, and I thought that they were all really good. This is a very interesting ensemble in the sense that we have obviously everybody from the previous film along with the newcomers into this one, and certain people in the previous film get some expanded roles here while the newcomers come in to slot into certain places, and everybody felt like they had a role to play. There wasn't any wasted roles. So let's start with Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt. Now, what can be said about Cruise that has been said already? He is great in this role, and this is definitely the most iconic role that he has in his film repertoire, in the sense that Ethan Hunt, he is a guy who is 100% committed to the mission. He will do whatever it takes. He will break the rules. He will do almost anything in such crazy and insane ways. And you're just wondering how anyone can have the mental fortitude to do what he does. But he does it, and he does it well by the skin of his teeth on a number of occasions. This guy should have died many a time, but he just keeps going. And again, that tenacity is what makes Ethan Hunt so fun, but also he gives a crap about the people surrounding him and about the world. And Tom Cruise does well with his dramatic moments, but also with the physical stuff. And as per usual, he is running all over the place, and it is great. So fun. And I also like the members of his IMF team. Ving Rhames, the only other person in this series who has been part of this franchise as long as Ethan has. He has his really great moments, and there's a lot of moments between those two. And just for Ving Rhames just to be a little bit more dramatic and show off his acting chops just a little bit more. And Rhames, I love him. I love him so much. He's really cool. And then there's Simon Pegg as Benji. I really like Benji. I feel like his roles have still been pretty pivotal to the films, but in this one, he's maybe a little bit more in the background than I have seen him in some of the other films. But again, Simon Pegg does pretty well with his role, and Haley Atwell as Grace, really like her. She was fun. It was great to have her as part of the team now, and seeing how she came into play with this movie and seeing the action stuff that she had to do on top of like some of the other situations she had to be in, whether it was like alone or with other people. She had great interaction with everybody, and like, Atwell, really good as per usual. And Esai Morales as Gabriel. Oh my gosh, this guy is great. I liked him in the previous film, but I felt like he was a little undercooked as a villain. He had the look, he had the the presence, but I felt he was just a little bit, not nearly as intense or as interesting as some of the villains that came before, like the bad guy from Rogue Nation or Philip Seymour Hoffman in like number 3. But in this film, I felt like we got to see a little bit more of his personality, see him be a little bit more aggressive and having a little bit more fun with the role. And there are moments in this film where he is just going extra, and I love it so much. This, for Morales in this film, I had a really good time with him. He was great. And Pom Clementif, at least I think that's how you say her last name. I've always been a little sketchy about that. As Paris, she was great. She got to do a little bit more in this film, and seeing her cold yet like reserved demeanor and be a little aggressive and comedic in certain moments in a reserved yet notable way was really fun. Again, Pom is really fun in this role, and I had a really good time watching her. And Henry Cerny, at least I think that's how you say his name, as Kittredge. He was really good. I had a good time watching him, and bringing back Angela Bassett as Erica Sloane. I was so happy to see her back because I was a little sad to not see her in Dead Reckoning. So I was just like, oh, they got rid of her. Because one of the things I've liked about the series, especially going from 3 onwards, is the way that they were able to continue to bring back people who were established in a certain entry. So I was like, ah, she's gone. But now she's back. And I'm like, yes, good times. And again, Bassett, she is wonderful. And then you had just appearances from a load of other people all over the place. Whether you're talking about Nick Offerman as General Sidney, who was cool. I also liked Janet McTeer as Walters. And gosh, there was just so many other people. Shea Wingham as I still like that guy quite a bit. And he was pretty good. He had a little bit more of an expanded role in this film than I expected. But again, really solid. I also liked Hannah Waddingham. She had a pretty good role in here. And obviously Greg Tarzan Davis as Theo. Again, him as part of like his duo with Shea Wingham in the previous films, they were good. But he had, again, a little bit more of an expanded role in this one, and I really enjoyed what he did. And there were a few other unexpected people who just made appearances towards the last side of the film that I didn't even know were in there. And I was like, yo, I know you from this TV show or this film. And I'm like, yo, I was very happy to see you. Oh, and shout out to my man, Tremel Tillman. He played a captain in this film, and I was just like, yo, it's my dude from Severance, and he was delightful. Okay, and now it's time to talk about the presentation. I thought it was really solid. Visually, this film was really good with a nice variety of locations. The cinematography was pretty cool, and the action sequences were all pretty well handled. I will admit there were some interesting / odd choices when it came to the editing and scene transitions, some of which became a little bit irksome for my eyes when watching, but thankfully it was not done to a degree where it became annoying, but it was noticeable. And I did like the action sequences in this film. As I've said before in previous reviews, from Ghost Protocol onwards, there was at least this need to have a set piece during certain moments in this franchise. And in each film, you've had at least either 1 or 2 notable moments for Ethan to go about and do all sorts of chaos. Stuff that is humanly just inconceivable when you watch it on screen. And in this case, we have a very extended sequence where he is not only flying planes but also hanging off the side of them, and good gravy, it is just all sorts of thrilling, very well choreographed, and just all sorts of dangerous. I'm like, ugh, stress. That's what those action sequences do to you, but it's part of the fun of watching the experience, just trying to figure out how Ethan will navigate these things and get out of it. And again, the play sequence was great. There was also some stuff underwater which was just stupidly stressful. As someone who hates the ocean and the idea of being stuck down there, disgusting. But yeah, man, I really enjoyed the action in here. It was pretty well done. And then it comes to the film score. As you know, I'm a big fan of film scores, especially when it comes to this franchise. And we've had a number of very notable directors that come into the franchise, but also a number of notable composers as well. And this is the first time for a while where we haven't had someone who was notable. In this case, we had two composers in the form of Max Aruj and Alfie Godfrey. These are not names I'm familiar with myself, but when it came to the score, it feels like they were borrowing the material that was used by Lorne Balfe in the previous two entries, but crafting a few of their own original pieces as well. And I felt like it was solid for the most part. The music was suitably quiet and calm and introspective when necessary, but more bombastic and intense when needed as well. Again, it felt like these two composers were borrowing a lot of like the compositions that were used before, but then sort of crafting their own new stuff around it. And I would say it's good, just not as great as some of the stuff that's come before, in my opinion. Okay, so that leads us to the conclusion. Overall, I would say Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning was good and a solid conclusion for the series. I can understand why some people wouldn't be in love with this entry because it has a lot of callbacks and references to the previous films. The story is definitely half of a whole, so there's certainly aspects of this film that you'll only enjoy if you have Dead Reckoning fresh in your memory. And there's certain issues to be found with the pacing, certain retrospective aspects in there that felt a little self-indulgent at times, and with the story as it was like really good, but at the same time didn't reach the heights of some of the previous entries. But again, by the time I got to the end of that movie, I was just in a very satisfied place, and I'm like, this is a good note to end on. It felt satisfying, and I would definitely recommend it. Again, if you're a fan of this franchise, you'd give it a shot. As for people who are a little bit more casual or not so interested, I'm not sure if this would be the film to sway you, but hey ho, we'll see. So now I turn it to you, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think of The Final Reckoning? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And how would you rank it compared to the previous entries in the series? Let me know in the comment section below, or hit me up on Twitter where I'm Hypersonic55, or God, what's my name on there again? Gosh, that's terrible. Or hit me up on Twitter where I'm Hypersonic55, or at filmfocus55, or check us out on Instagram. And when it comes to the podcast, we can be found in all sorts of places, whether it's SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and all those other places where podcasts can be found, including YouTube as well. So yeah, I guess that's it for now. Thank you for listening as always, and until the next time, this is the Hypersonic55 signing out. Peace.